Welcome to the Saturday Morning Nerd Show. I'm Marcus Blake, your host. Enjoy it with me, the brewing sailor, as always, Brendan Smith.
Hello,
as you can see, he's getting ready for what is probably going to be his favorite game of the year.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. All right. And we got Mr. Chad Womack from the Electric Jellyfish podcast.
Evening, folks, or morning, or whatever you're watching it.
And Jimmy Alford, welcome back as usual. It's great to have you be part of the gang. So, as you can tell by my t-shirt, it is the Cobra Kai show. We have been waiting 7 years to talk about how this show has wrapped up and all the goodness within the show and some minor complaints, but we're going to get into that a little bit later. But if you haven't caught up on Cobra Kai at the time of watching this show, we are going to have lots of spoilers. We have to talk about how it ended. And I'm going to be very disappointed in any nerd who is a fan that hasn't finished it yet. So there you go. But before we get to that, we've got a little bit of nerd news, some reviews, things that are happening at the time of this recording, or by the time you're watching it. Yes, check out our newest edition of the magazine, which featured an article about Cobra Kai and how it went out with a bang, and also how it made the Karate Kid movies or Karate Kid universe better than the movies ever did. So we're going to get into that a little bit later. So we're actually going to start with this week's Sign of the Apocalypse because it literally just happened at the time of this, the day of this recording. And this has got to be the most bonkers bullshit ever by Amazon. So
that's saying something.
Right. Michael Wilson and Barbara Broccoli have given up complete control of James Bond. They're taking a step back, and Amazon MGM Studios has complete creative control of James Bond now. And I know what you're thinking. Nothing bad could ever happen with this.
Now, just to give some context to our listeners, as a matter of fact, I brought this up in our chat a couple of weeks ago, not 2 months ago. Barbara Broccoli stormed out of a meeting with Amazon executives, calling them all, and I quote, a bunch of fucking idiots.
Yeah.
Because one of the Amazon executives, Jennifer Salke, got up and actually said that they do not view James Bond as a hero. These are the people that are now in control of James Bond.
Right. So, so you're going to make a movie, TV show that's not a hero. So James Bond is the villain now. Is Spectre the hero? Is that what is Blofeld the hero in this scenario? I just...
Like I said earlier when you brought this up, get ready for James Bond, The Rings of Power.
Yeah, and we keep preaching about it on this show. Respect the source material.
That's definitely on our t-shirts, I swear to God.
No, I'm already making t-shirts. Yeah, real writers respect the source material. And you know, when they did the 40th anniversary of James Bond, they had a really great documentary that came out that year about history and stuff. And Cubby Broccoli always said, when in doubt, always go back to the books. Okay, even though some things were changed depending on the time they made one of the movies, and then of course Moonraker, the movie, has nothing to do with the actual book.
Didn't give us Q's greatest one-liner of all time, though.
It did. But his point is they always respected the source material. Okay. They always said that Ian Fleming created a great roadmap. Okay. And there wasn't any reason to change that. And yes, some of the things that came after were based off short stories. Quantum of Solace is actually based off a short story, even though the movie has nowhere near what the short story. Octopussy, a short story. Even authors who have been paid to write James Bond novels by the publishers have respected the source material, okay, and did exactly what you're supposed to with James Bond. You can call him an anti-hero if you want, but he is, as Gary Oldman, Commissioner Gordon quoted in Dark Knight Rises, Dark Knight, he's the hero we need. Okay. And if you don't get that, if you don't understand that because you think James Bond is too much of a misogynist prick, or, he needs to be gay, trans, or whatever to fit with the timeline, then fuck off. Just don't make anything more of James Bond. Let it die.
Yeah. Well, this is, again, to provide some context to our viewers. A couple of years back, Jeff Bezos was looking for Amazon Prime's Game of Thrones. And they have settled on Ryan Condal doing a strict adaptation of the Dune books, which would have been amazing.
Yeah.
But instead, now this was at the height of the Me Too movement. So there's some context there. And I'm not saying the Me Too movement shouldn't have happened. It definitely should have. Harvey Weinstein deserves every horrible thing that ever happens to him. And right. All the ones that do terrible things to kids 10 times as much. But Jennifer Salke comes in and says, "Oh, no, that's way too misogynistic for my time frame. We are getting rid of Ryan Condal, and we're going to do the Rings of Power, and we're going to give $1 billion to two jagoffs from Bad Robot Bad Reboot, who have never written a damn thing in their lives. Their only credit is that they are uncredited on Star Trek Beyond, and we're going to give them $1 billion." And then Ryan Condal goes off and does House of the Dragon for Game of Thrones and HBO, and absolutely wipes the floor with her. So that's who's in charge of James Bond now.
Yeah.
Oh, goody.
Yeah.
Now, granted, Prime has done some good things. They've done Bosch and they've done Reacher and was it the one with Chris Pratt, the Terminalist.
Right.
And it seems like they adapt like those kind of not spy, but military / detective shows very well.
Right.
But when you get into the more fantasy because, then there's Wheel of Time, and that's another mess, it gets a little wonky. So Bond kind of falls in a weird middle ground because, yes, it's spy, but it's also very hyper. Well, it's not realistic spying stories.
Yeah.
It's not hyper realistic. There is some modern fantasy, if you will, to it.
Yeah.
Well, I will even go as far as to say that the John Krasinski, Jack Ryan series is not the worst adaptation. Would it have been better if it had actually been set during the Cold War and all that in a period? But sure.
Yeah, we've discussed that many times.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's not horrible, and it's not so far off the source material that you completely hate it. Whereas the Rings of Power idiots, who cares about time and actual source material? You're talking about people who actually have never read the Silmarillion or any appendix whatsoever. And they got rid of the people that actually were the experts.
Yeah.
Hey, does that sound familiar? Yeah, it's called the Witcher TV show on Netflix.
What I find interesting is that when a company or CEO gets enough money, right, they stop making decisions based on expertise, quality, just anything that builds a company or builds a good product. They decide that we have enough money where we don't have to play by those rules and we can do whatever we want. And then they have Pikachu surprise space when none of it works because they have literally done nothing that they literally built themselves on.
Well, it's
crazy to me.
To take that a step farther, I think what the root of it is once they have something to lose, they become risk averse because new IPs are inherently a risk. Now, when you're coming up and you don't have the big bag of cash, you're willing to take those risks because you're trying to acquire the big bag of cash. But once you have that big bag of cash, you want to keep your big bag of cash. So that instead of doing new risks and new IPs, that's why we have 7 different Star Trek shows that nobody watches. That's why we have, now what are we going to have by the next 5 years, 30 something MCU movies and 15 MCU shows. That's why you have all of these sequels and remakes, and because they're considered safe and it's an easy investment. They think they'll get a return on their money. And for a long time they were. Now it'll be interesting to see with the MCU and Star Wars and Star Trek not providing the return on the investment, will they tend to shy away from more sequels and remakes in the future? And are they going to start, going, is the pendulum going to swing back? Are they going to start looking for new things like Stranger Things? And
Oh no.
Well,
You say that, but I think that's always been the case. I mean, if you look back, I mean, there's a reason why, James Bond has been around since the 50s. I mean, studios in general always stick with what works.
see,
I mean, like,
yes, but James Bond is a little bit of a separate animal because you have to remember James Bond has been controlled by the Broccoli family for 50 years, and that's all they do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. They don't do anything else. That's
Yeah.
their thing, their baby. That's it. I'm talking like the big studios. I'm talking your Amazons, your Paramounts,
yeah, no, and I get what you're saying. But my point though is that, I mean, if you look back, I mean, we have had a lot of evidence to show that they keep going back to old IPs over and over and over again. In time immemorial, like you mentioned, Star Trek. Star Trek has literally been around for over 60 years now.
But they were willing to do new things with it and different things and not make carbon copies. And also, I think we're seeing less new IPs today than we were in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Well, this
I
is
mean, I can see that.
obviously a bigger discussion and everything. But the point of this week's Son of the Apocalypse is, can you really trust Amazon to do it right when they don't think James Bond is a hero? And it's like, if what we have known of James Bond ends with No Time to Die, that's a good place to end the way it all worked. Have no faith in it whatsoever. And it's just like, okay, well, whatever. But I will say this to Amazon, and I'm not above shameless promotion. You could split that $1 billion you do for Rings of Power, do half of it for Rings of Power of something shitty, and I'll give you a property that I know is going to be good.
Yeah.
I just wish that Apple had pony upped for MGM instead of Amazon.
Yeah.
Because Apple's just putting out banger after banger.
Yeah.
Well, and eventually we're going to be doing a podcast just strictly about how Apple is getting it right. And whether they lose money or not, I mean, the quality of programming. So
everything I've watched from them has been,
yeah.
I think the lowest I've given anything I've watched from them is a 7. Most things have been a solid 8 or a 9.
Yeah, there hasn't been anything on that platform. I mean, granted, nerd wise, but even some of the dramatic stuff like the morning show has turned out to be good drama for what it is. But
I mean, I would have settled for HBO Max, Time Warner to have bought it instead of Amazon. They put out some dog crap, but they have some winners every now and then.
Sadly, they're broke.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Apple actually had the money to do it. But yeah, you're right though. In principle, I agree with you.
Right. But here we are. And speaking of shitty properties, quick review on Captain America, Brave New World. Oh, I'm sorry, the Red Hulk movie. If you have not seen this movie and you've been on the fence, whether you should go see it in the theater or wait for it to hit Disney Plus, watch it for free. I have had this private chat with everybody. I was a professional. I went to go see the movie. I even paid to go see the movie because Disney has cut down on press credentials because they don't really want bad reviews. And they're looking for Rotten Tomato critics and corporate critics.
This time.
Yeah, that they can buy off. It's insane.
Well, I'm just saying that I agree that's what they're doing, but it didn't work out so well for them this time because I think it's sitting at a 45 from the critics right now.
Yeah, you can't hide that nobody cares about this movie. Okay, the worst insult I got was from our assistant editor Allison when her and her husband finally had a date night. Why didn't you warn me? We wasted money on this movie. I said, I'm sorry. I owe you.
So. Yeah, I was actually going to go see it, and then I saw it. Now, for long-time viewers, you will know that I tend to grade things a point or two lower than Marcus on most times. There have been exceptions, but most of the time I'm a point or two lower than Marcus. When Marcus gets into our private chat and says that's the worst MCU movie I've ever seen, I'm like, oh, fuck it, that ain't worth 10
I
bucks.
gave it a 4. I literally, the only movie that has ever tied on when it comes to a score on a superhero movie was that shitty remake of Fantastic Four with Michael B. Jordan, Kate Mara, and Miles. Yeah. That got like a 4. And the only reason it even got some points, despite its huge mess, is it had a really good cast and some fun, action scenes. And it sort of told an interesting, origin story. But when Captain America: Brave New World gets that kind of a grade, then I'm sorry. And here's my biggest complaint. We don't care about Sam Wilson as Captain America. We just don't. It's nothing against Sam Wilson as a character. He's been great in the Marvel movies. I like Anthony Mackie, but I like him as the Falcon. Okay. I'm sorry. He's a sidekick. Okay. In a bigger picture.
I personally, I agree with you. I mean, him as an actor, I like him as an actor in certain roles. For Captain America, for me, he doesn't really fit. And I will admit, as a middle-aged white guy, I pull back a little bit. It's like, oh my God, I'm criticizing the black character they made the new Captain America. But I do think that there are other actors that would have done a way better job. I mean, you just mentioned Michael B. Jordan, and there are lots of other actors I think would have made a more believable Captain America.
It has nothing. It has nothing to do with a black Captain America. It has the fact that you have Sam Wilson, who is just not that engaging. He's not a super soldier. And when you keep making jokes throughout the movie that I should have taken the serum, you're making me agree with you that you should have become a super soldier. You want a black Captain America? That's fine. Nothing against that. More power.
Give me Terry Crews.
Terry Crews would have nailed it.
Just
absolutely.
I mean, between the muscles, and B, between that smile.
Right. But the Isaiah Bradley Captain America, I'm more interested in his story and getting a second chance than I am the Falcon becoming Captain America. So it's like the only thing you really did right in this movie is Harrison Ford is a great choice for General Ross. He really is. If you're going to replace William Hurt, Harrison Ford nails it. It's great. You have kind of an interesting story, but even the villain is not that engaging. All you did was make a 2-hour movie that should have been a credit scene on any other movie to set up what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for wasting my time.
So I heard Red Hulk's only in it for like 5-6 minutes. Is that true?
Yeah, it's literally.
So what you're telling me is that the 80-year-old could only keep it up for 5 or 6 minutes.
Well,
I feel like there's a Walter About Thou, Jack Lemmon, grumpier old men joke in there somehow.
I'm gonna have to start grading certain movies on, because for the longest time, Shannon and I were always going back and forth on films that had a better soundtrack than the movie that they were sprung from, and which again I think would make a really good episode on here at some point. But I'm gonna start saying that there are some instances where the popcorn bucket they made for this movie is better than the movie itself. And obviously, I think this applies because I'm waiting for mine to show up from the AMC store, because that's a badass popcorn bucket.
Yeah, I mean,
that's been happening a lot lately, though. That's not a good sign for Hollywood.
No, it really isn't.
The bucket of popcorn I got was cooler than the movie you made me watch to get it.
And it's a sad indictment on the state of the industry.
You know who had scored the biggest victory with the release of Captain America: Brave New World? The Draft House, who had $7 movie tickets for it. I'm like, you nailed it. Mm-hmm. And our buddy Daniel with Real News was actually texting me. I went to go see an early screening because I needed to get the review in on that Thursday. But he's like, come to the Draft House. I have edibles for you and alcohol. And I should have taken him up on it because that was the only way to get through that movie.
Yeah, I'm going to need some of his grandma brownies to get through that movie.
So
That's
sad.
Oh, by the way, I think another Avatar movie is coming out this year, which we have to see. So I will share this quick story. Hippie Grandma Brownies. When we saw the last one, it was a 3-hour fucking mess of a movie. And he had brownies. They kicked in at the right time to get through that movie. The rest of the movie was amazing. And I'm just like,
Marcus thought he was in Finding Nemo talking to the turtles.
I try to limit
Actually, it
myself.
sounds like a great time.
Yeah,
That does. Far
try-
better than watching it sober, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I try to limit myself to like a corner or a quarter of a brownie. I ate the entire fucking brownie to get through that.
Oh, you were
Daniel-
soaring.
Daniel's
Oh.
looking over at you. Yaywar hears you.
I was
Yaywar
trying to
hears
touch
you.
the bright lights.
He was flying between the two flying Navi flying things, and they were like, what the hell is this human doing this shit?
Well, and it made it even worse because we had to watch it in 3D because James
Oh,
Cameron
God.
like, in 3D.
How did you
Hey,
say?
I got a really good big meal after that movie.
Marcus has been to Pandora.
Oh, but anyway, yeah, there is nothing special about this Captain America movie, and it makes me care less and less about the character. I mean, I'm actually wanting more to see the Thunderbolts or Marvel Suicide Squad because I'm rooting for those guys more than I am for the new Avengers that are being put together. So here we are. But I digress. So the big question is, and we were considering doing it as a panel. It's a backup panel at AllCon this year. Has the pendulum swung to DC, and all the evidence, even before we've seen the next this new Superman movie, is yes. I think that we're going to get better DC movies. And it's been a very long time since we can say that. And Jimmy's more excited because it's not the Snyderverse.
Yes, so very excited.
It's not the
But
slow-mo verse.
I will say this: I have some apprehension about thinking that it swung back to DC. I fear that we're going to get one decent one-off movie, and then they're going to try to make a DC universe type thing and make everybody groan and stop watching again. That the lure of the big money is I'm worried it's going to ruin all of our expectations.
I don't really care so much about David Corner's Suite of Superman. I mean, we'll see what happens. Or Miley, what's her name? Alok from House of Dragons. I know I mispronounced.
Alcock.
Yeah. I care more about these two casting choices. Jason Momoa as Lobo.
Oh my
Dude,
God.
you fucking nailed that.
Yeah, the internet's only been calling that for, let me check my watch, 10 years.
Yeah, I know.
Absolutely.
Stargate, yeah.
And Rachel Brosnan from The Marvelous Miss Maisel as Lois Lane. I'm like, again, you nailed that. If you don't think she's not going to be a good Lois Lane, then go watch that show. She's got
Just
the flair.
Just go watch her recent interview where she, heaps praise on Margot Kidder and Christopher Reeve. She talks about being in a hopeful, uplifting superhero story, which, God, where is that gone in superhero stories? She praising the fans and their passion. And it's like, you see, Marvel, this is how you do PR.
Right. So, and again, all 5 seasons are out. If you've never watched The Marvelous Miss Maisel, catch up on it because she's wonderful in that show. She's an amazing actress, and but anyway, that'll be. But we'll get to talking about Superman later in the summer. All right, a couple of other things at the time of this recording. Reacher season 3 has started, so you can catch up on the first 3 episodes. We'll get into our final review in about a month or so when they drop all episodes. While I am not going to spoil anything, I will just say for those who have seen it all the way through, fucking amazing as usual. That's one show that, even if this season's not as good as the previous two, it's still just fantastic. So,
A lot of people are saying this one's actually better than season 2, which all of a sudden I've seen a lot of like retro hate for season 2 online, and I'm like, why? I thoroughly enjoyed it.
yeah, I will be honest. I still think season 1 is my favorite.
Concur.
Right. I do love season 2 because you get that backstory about the 1/10th.
Yeah.
Me, this is the weakest season, but it's right there with season 2.
You know what though? Maybe just because we're military guys, and so all the interaction between them was like, when we meet up with our old military buddies and it's been 10, 15 years, and we fall back into old habits and patterns.
Yeah.
And so maybe it just speaks to us on a different level than people who didn't serve. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just pulling at straws.
I was telling the other day, our buddy Daniel, because we were talking about the first 3 episodes, that I love the female protagonist that he ends up, kind of getting with and everything, because she's, very Boston Irish, and has a mouth on her, doesn't shy away from anything. And there's a great scene in one of the episodes when they're visiting someone and she's kind of blushing, and the old Irish woman just says, "Be careful now, your Irish is showing," around Reacher. And she has, and nothing against Neely, I love Neely, but he kind of gets with a new girl each series, and she has been my favorite personally. But Willa Fitzgerald from season 1 was great as well. So, all right. One last thing. While I do talk about Harrison Ford was pretty good as General Ross in the Captain America movie, the only thing I really care about is season 2 of 1923 drops this weekend. And
between that and Reacher, it's going to be a good Friday night.
Well, I'm telling you, Sunday, tomorrow after the next day after this show, we get the first, I think, 2 episodes. But regardless, 1923 season 2 is going to be off the chain, and Helen Mirren, Harrison Ford defending the ranch when a new young hero comes to basically just kill everybody. Yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Spencer getting home.
Yeah.
Also, I've got to get deeper into Avowed this weekend. I just got through the initial area, but
yeah,
so far okay.
Yeah, I know. It's like I haven't had much time too at the time of the recording of this show, so I'm trying to jump into it.
I'm going to try and put at least 10, 15 hours in this weekend. We'll see if that actually happens.
I know, us nerds, first world problems. Oh, I don't have time to game. Anyway.
Well, right now I have nothing but time to game because I'm broke.
Thank you, free Game Pass RPG. All right.
Yeah.
So, the show you've been waiting for, 7 years waiting to see how this was going to end. We're going to talk about Cobra Kai. And I'm going to start off with this question because Jimmy wasn't with us when we started. Actually, Chad kind of wasn't. Came recently after like the first season. But Brendan and I have talked about this over the years. And I remember after season 1, we saw a friend of the show, Devin Pike, who's done multimedia stuff, when season 1 got done. So I asked the question, did anybody expect this show to be so good? And that was after season 1. So
right, which, if we go back in the Wayback Machine, was actually on YouTube Red. It wasn't even on Netflix.
Yeah, I know.
So it was actually hard for a lot of people to see. So
right, first 2 seasons were on YouTube, and then it dropped to Netflix and just really became popular with season 3. So here is my question. Again, the same question where I'm going to ask 7 years later. Did any of you expect this show to turn out so good? I did not. I personally just was like, this is a cash grab. It's not going to be very good. We don't really care that much. And then they made me care. So Jimmy, Brendan.
No, please, Jimmy, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, for me personally, because like literally I had like the gi and I had like all the stuff. Like I was a Karate Kid nerd. Growing up in the 80s, it was one of my that and Top Gun. Those were my top favorite movies of all time as a kid. I was so hoped it was going to good. I feel like people like me willed this show to be as good as it is, if you believe in that sort of thing. And honestly, I yeah, I was kind of surprised. And I was kind of surprised with all the mix of the new characters and just the different, just all of that it actually worked, and pleasantly surprised.
Hey, Jimmy, let me ask you, how in relation to Marcus, how old are you?
I am 40. I was born in
So you're little-
1984.
Okay,
I
so
was
you were born the year it came out.
Yes,
so,
I
all right, so-
literally grew up watching this.
I know
Like,
Chad is a little bit older than Marcus and I, but Marcus and I are basically the same age.
Yeah.
And Marcus, October '84. Did you go for Halloween as the Karate Kid? Because I sure did.
I don't really remember.
October '84. Yeah, I was.
I
Definitely
don't
the Karate
know.
Kid.
I don't know if I'd actually seen the movie yet.
Yeah, because it came out in the summer, and
I-
then I think the next year I think I went as Maverick because I think Top Gun comes out summer of '85.
No, summer of '86.
Okay, then it was October '86 I came out.
I think Karate Kid, the first Karate Kid movie for me, because it was about that time that my mom got, the first VCR
right.
rent movies. I never saw it
God.
in the theater. I just
The
remember.
'80s were so awesome.
I know. Well, you talk about if you didn't have a VCR, if you had parents who couldn't afford $900 to get a VCR, you rented a VCR and a stack of movies for the weekend.
Right.
And there was a lot of older movies that's how I caught up on it. So I think one weekend, like in '85, with other cousins, we got to watch like The Goonies and we got to watch Karate Kid and
Gotcha.
some other shit. So I don't remember.
I had a sister that was 10 years older than me. So every time I was bugging my mother as a little kid, and once my sister was old enough to drive, my mom would just toss her the keys and say, "Go take him to a movie, get him out of my hair."
Yeah. Right.
So I got to see a lot of movies as a little kid.
I was very fortunate. My grandfather actually repaired electronics. We had a VCR and a TV in every room that he literally would get broken, fix, and and we literally had all of it. And he paid and had HBO, and
There's
he
no
would
shame
tape
in
off a
that game.
TV.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And
Everybody.
we had stacks and stacks of VHS tapes. That's how I lived my life growing
Well,
up.
my grandparents, about 85, saved and bought VCRs for all their children and their grandchildren, and and of course my grandmother learned how to copy movies before they started putting the censor shit on there. So we would get those things, and of course people would always end up at my house because my mom would let people watch movies they didn't necessarily get to watch at home. But so it's somewhere in the mix of there. That's what I remember. But
So
anyway, to the original question, Chad, Brendan, I mean, did you guys expect this show to turn out so well?
Not
Chad,
even close.
you go ahead, Chad. I'll go last.
Not even close. It is so rare that something that is so that steeped in nostalgia nowadays not only meets any kind of expectations, because I really didn't have expectations, considering that by the time the Karate Kid film franchise ended, it had pretty much jumped the shark. It was a disaster piece. It had really lost its way. Karate Kid 2, I think, is where it pretty much peaked. And even then, it still wasn't as good as the original.
I still like Karate Kid Part 2 better, but that's just me personally.
Well, I mean, it's kind of 1 and 1A, but then after that, just deep dive. It was just completely off the cliff. So and you followed it through 3, and then the next Karate Kid, the less said about that, the better.
Pretty much.
I'm sorry. I've had long discussions with Mark already about Jackie Chan's Karate Kid, and
Well, we're not even getting to that one yet.
No,
he's
no, I'm
talking
not
about
even
he's
there
talking
yet.
about the Elizabeth shoot or the
well, I know that's
Killer
the third
Swank.
one.
right.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't even think that movie's that terrible. I mean, it's hokey and it's like a good bad compared to a lot of things, but
Well,
my
compared to some of the shit dropping today, it's high cinema, but that's another
yeah,
story.
I mean, my biggest complaint is there's not a really good villain. And it's hard to have a good villain after Terry Silver. That's what made Karate Kid Part 3 really good, is Terry Silver is the ultimate villain.
Yeah.
But but I get what you're saying. And somehow they managed to make us care about this universe again and bring back these characters that's like, okay, I do want to know where they are 30 years later. And you do.
Every time you saw a new one that we hadn't seen in a while, it just gave you a warm fuzzy. It was like when we saw the first time we saw Ahsoka and the Mandalorian, we're like, oh shit, and that happened every time whenever, Ali would show up or Kumiko would show up, and God almighty, when Chosen showed up, Jesus, that was like
by the way, Chosen has he steals every scene he's in.
Does.
Like literally every scene he's in.
Never would have thought that. Never would have thought that would have happened. But my God,
much like Everything Everywhere All at Once has kind of reignited Ke Huy Quan's career. I really hope Cobra Kai does this and I forget Chosen's actor's name, and I apologize, but I really hope it does it for him, because he is a treasure and he should be in as many things as we can put him in.
His line of "this is falling apart like a crunchy taco" just still makes me laugh every time.
It's so good because it's so relatable. We've all been there.
I'm like, did you hear what the hell he just said?
And here's the thing. When I was writing the article and kind of looking at the overall story, I noticed there's two things that really stand out for me. One, you get this great, fantastic story about Johnny because he disappears at the beginning of Karate Kid. We don't hear anything. We don't really care. You don't.
What a douchebag. Screw him, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, you don't really consider him a bad guy, but there's nothing to really care about. He lost. Daniel goes off into Okinawa, and there's bigger villains and blah, blah, blah. This show makes us care about him and his overall story. And I never consider Cobra Kai really about Daniel. I think it is more about Johnny.
Oh, it's definitely about Johnny. Yeah. Talk about the redemption arc. You talk about character development. It's like watching Loki. It really is. It was like watching Loki. You saw this guy that was just an absolute douchebag that didn't give a shit about anybody but himself and his whole self-indulgent attitude. And then you see just a complete 180. It's impressive. It's really impressive.
Well, and at the same time too, we never understood that while Johnny grew up rich, it was because of his stepdad, who was an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that he didn't really find himself until he found karate. And whether Kreese is a villain to a point, you understand why he's susceptible to that, because he finds belonging in a group where he can become champion, and he finds a mentor that cares about him, not somebody who's just rich and banging his mom. Again, ask yourself, if you go back and watch the movies, do you really care about Johnny Lawrence post the first movie in the beginning of Karate Kid Party? You don't. There's no reason to care about him in Cobra Kai.
I was kind of that. I think that's where the third movie actually made a mistake by instead of doing Mike Barnes, instead of giving us the rematch.
Yeah.
I really think they should have gotten William Zabka back and had a rematch.
Yeah. I mean, it's also kind of would have made his more of a redemption story if he still turned out to be kind of a douchebag, and even if he lost and everything. But regardless,
because they could have mirrored the Rocky story.
Yeah,
where they had another fight, and then maybe this time he wins, and then maybe now, but but because he's friends with Daniel, so now he pisses off Kreese and Silver, and then they go get Mike Barnes to beat up him.
Yeah,
that you could have done it a little differently. You could have done the flip on the Rocky. I don't know, maybe not. Who knows? I don't know.
I mean,
that's kind of what happens eventually here in season 7. But
yeah, true, it is
right, but. The main thing is you find these two characters who, the best way that I describe it is they're the odd couple. They very much, but they do need each other. Mm-hmm. They do become best friends, and it's not a battle rivalry.
You could even say they're the yin and yang.
Yeah, that's it. I actually put that in the article.
Yeah.
It is funny when they talk about balance throughout the show, that you have to find balance, that the balance between these characters is they do need each other.
Mm-hmm.
And Daniel's the one who really truly accepts that at the end, that Cobra Kai as a dojo is not the enemy, it's just the people teaching the style. So, Jimmy,
Right.
I didn't mean to.
Well, okay, you were talking about character arcs, and I really, and I love the character arcs, but at the same time, I do like the fact that they didn't have to give every single character a positive character arc, like Kreese, for instance. Like he does develop as a character, but he ultimately he remains still very much his very complex, morally gray character.
Yeah.
Uh, and I do enjoy that. I like you were keeping that balance. I felt like if they had given everybody that interesting character or the character development, the redemption, that I think it would have been, it's like might as well be My
Well,
Little Pony on the screen.
Yeah,
So
like it's like a
I mean,
Hallmark
Kreese-
movie.
Kreese-
yeah, like a Hallmark movie, but they didn't do that, and I think personally, I think that made the show better.
Yeah, I think
I mean,
Kreese does have a redemption arc, but it's not a happy-go-lucky redemption arc. It's a redemption arc that's true to the character.
Yeah.
Right. He does stay that morally gray, but he at least understands why he's that person now, and he can make better choices. And so he learns to admit his faults and to the people that he hurt, and then he goes out in a blaze of glory,
I'm about to say
helping
Blaze
the
of
ones he
Glory.
hurt.
Yeah. Well, let's just get to that real quick.
Yeah.
And for those who hadn't seen it or whatever, and there's a reason I said Cobra Kai goes out with a bang. Literally,
Oh shit.
if you want a great fucking ending, the two, villains here settling an old score or whatever, that was the way to do it. And they did.
I loved it when he throws the cigar and he yells no, and he just says mercy.
Mercy. Gangsta.
That's just, and then the shit blows up. Ultimate mic drop.
Yeah. If you are going to look at the ultimate villain in the Cobra Kai universe, it's always been Terry Silver. Okay. And kudos to the creators for getting Thomas Ian Griffith, who had, been retired, to come back and play that character. And
Speaking of the 80s, were there any two better go-to villains than Thomas Ian Griffith and Michael Wincott?
I know, right?
And they both kind of look the same too. They both have that look.
Yeah.
Tall, built but thin. So they kind of have that very wraith-like appearance. The dark hair, the pale skin.
Yeah. So we're going to get to more about redemption stories, and then we'll get into the final season. But I talk about how the creators made us care about characters. Okay. Like at the end of season 1, when you get Kreese to walk into the door, he's puffing on the cigar in the shadows and everything. It's like, yes, I kind of had the same moment when I first watched that I did when Luke Skywalker shows up in the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian. But you wanted to hate Kreese because he's Kreese. Like there's no way you're going to like him. And then they started doing flashbacks. This Vietnam story, and you're like, God damn.
Holy shit.
Yeah. The love of my life
spending.
dies in a car crash. I'm forced to fight to death in a Vietnam prison camp. It's like the fucking deer hunter thing going on here. All I want
And the amazing thing about that is that wouldn't have worked in 1984, because in 1984, you're 13 years removed from the withdrawal of Vietnam.
Yeah.
People still don't treat Vietnam veterans with the respect they deserved at that time.
No.
So hold on. I don't know. Rambo came out in 1985.
With
Well,
Martin
Rambo,
yeah.
the first Rambo came out in 1982. Rambo.
I'm sorry, Rambo Part
Right.
2. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
it came out
right,
in
but-
1985.
But First Blood was also a controversial movie, and there was a lot of things about it that, I don't think it works as well or as impactful as it is today, because after 20 years of war in the global war on terror, we are acutely aware of things like PTSD. It's now what was in the conscious of your average veteran back then is now in the consciousness of your average American.
Yeah, the
And that's a
public
very
mainstream.
different thing.
Well,
It's very mainstream. So I think it's more impactful today than it was back then. Because even if I go talk to some people that aren't veterans about First Blood, about Rambo, they don't think of Rambo as a thoughtful look back as, you know, film cinemaphiles do, film geeks do, but and military guys do. But your average civilian who just likes an occasional movie, they don't look at Rambo like a thoughtful, thought-provoking, evocative look at what happened to veterans after Vietnam. They look at it as blood and guts.
Yeah. Then go.
You know,
right. And you're also talking about people that probably never read the original book where Rambo
Very true.
died, you know, and
Yeah.
it's because you are dealing with the old, you know, a veteran and, you know, PTSD, all of those things. And credit to Sylvester Stallone for saying you can't have him die. That's too dark. You have to give them hope. And then, of
Yep.
course, they gave him the greatest American hope ever. They're post with Rambo 2 and 3. You know,
Well, I mean,
fight communism.
but you know, if you're going to tie it to the last 20 years, I mean, Rambo is the reason why we had to fight in Afghanistan. So, oops.
Yeah. We don't think we don't think those group of people at the end of Rambo 3 anymore. That's been
Oh, we
taken
not.
out. Yeah.
If you
Calvin
look, you can
Fighters
still
have been
find that
outlawed
screen
on-
grab.
Yeah. You still can. You know, someday we'll have to do an interesting discussion. Which is the most American Sylvester Stallone movie against fighting communism? Is it Rambo, First Blood Part 2, or 3, or is it Rocky 4?
Rocky 4.
it's Rocky 4.
That's right.
Because,
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but
I mean,
And I
one-
can change. Everybody can change.
one year, well, there's that. But also, one in Rambo, you're fighting, and I forget even why he goes into Afghanistan. Like I forget the impotence for.
no, the colonel gets captured.
Yeah.
Oh, the colonel gets
That's why,
okay.
yeah, that's why.
It's been 25 years since I've seen the movie.
I
but
hear you. I hear you.
So I just remember him blowing up a hind helicopter with a bow and arrow, and even as a kid, I went. Anyway, so but
I'm sorry.
so you're
Every
fighting-
like 10-year-old wanted one of those. FYI.
Oh,
Every
God,
10-year-old was like tying like firecrackers to the end of their you know
their
their blunt
Walcott
tips. to-
5 and dime plastic bow.
But I mean, again, going back to Kreese, and I agree with you, Brendan. I think that's, you know, an astute observation about we're willing more to accept that now than we would have been in 1984. And it gives us, he's a sympathetic villain.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's still a villain. He's just
Right.
it's not as straightforward as it is with Silver.
Well, to me, the Vietnam flashback scenes are great. But I think the more important ones is about him actually learning Cobra Kai and kind of watching over the girl, you know, and her mean uncle or grandfather, who really is just a complete, you know, shit ass.
Oh, he's a sociopath.
Yeah. And by the way, who would have saw that love story coming?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Where it shows it.
I love the little. At the
Yeah,
end.
I know.
Yeah.
Very, very subtle, but it was there.
I mean, again, getting back to and I did a special thanks to him because I didn't think I would have really ever care about any of these characters or anything. It would be that fun, you know, exploring a new generation. And then I kind of realized something because while I've been going back and watching it, to me, the crossover moment, the ultimate moment where Johnny and Daniel realize that they need each other, that they are the same. It's the Elizabeth Shue episode. It's when she comes back and she's hearing all the stories and she's the one that kind of sets them straight. Is like, you guys are more alike than you want to admit. And then they have to go have the ultimate fight with Kreese, you know, and there's just that look like, okay, here it is. And even though they're different and even though they argue about styles, which by the way, I still love the flying tornado kick. So, I mean, I'm sorry.
I will say the only criticism I ever had about this show is the fact that it does blur the lines between karate and MMA.
Yeah, right. At times, right. So, but you get all of these great redemption arcs more than anything else. And while you can say that the entire series really is about Johnny coming full circle and making us care, and I do, and Daniel kind of being the secondary character, you also start to realize that Daniel is kind of an asshole. He's not. He's got a little too New Jersey in him and flies off the handle, jumps to conclusion. And again, that's what makes that Elizabeth Shue episode great, is you learn that she didn't really cheat on him, but he jumped to conclusions. So, two things I want to talk about: redemption arcs, who had the greatest, and then we're going to dive into the Easter eggs. So, last year when we were doing the red carpet with William Zabka and Ralph Macchio, we were very limited. And my question to Ralph was who he felt had the greatest redemption story. And he kind of laughed. He's like, well, I have to just pick one. I'm like, yeah, we only have so much time. But I absolutely agreed with him when he talked about Chosen more than anything else.
Yeah.
Who saw that coming?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Yeah, because you hear about it and they're like, oh, they're gonna bring all these characters back, and you're like, okay, the good guys are still gonna be good guys, and the bad guys are still gonna be bad guys. And no, they flipped a lot of it on their heads. And Chosen, not only, I mean, because when you last see Chosen, he's pretty despicable. In 1987 or whatever it was.
1986, yeah.
86. Okay, so he's pretty despicable. And then you see him, and there's that initial tense scene, and then he kind of pulls a joke on Danielson, and you're like, and you're like, okay, they're going to do something different here. And then the more he's on, the more likable he is.
Yeah.
And, he instantly becomes an amazing friend and confidant to Daniel. And like the last time you saw him, it was
Live or die.
Loggerheads.
Yeah, right. We're going to fight to the death here.
And like 20 minutes into his return, they're ride or die buddies. And,
yeah.
You're like, the hell? What the?
And but the one thing I want to talk about, the reason why these redemption arcs work so well in this show is because the writers, and God bless them, may they get many wonderful projects, because we sorely need people of your talent.
Yes.
They do something so well that's so core to all of these shows that we love: setup and payoff. Because so often today, writers try to have the cheap payoff without any setup, and it comes off as unearned and unauthentic, and it just falls flat, and we all go,
Yeah.
And this doesn't, because they set everything up so well, so that when it does pay off, you just want to throw your hand up in the air and go, yes! Like you were a little kid watching Daniel smack Johnny in the face again with brain kick. So the setup and payoff, they do it so well. They do it all throughout the series. They do it in every episode. They do it in every season. And then at the end of the season, the end of the entire series, there's callbacks to the beginning of the show. There's callbacks to the beginning of the entire franchise. And it all comes full circle and gets tied up in a neat little bow, and it's perfect. And it doesn't need anything else. But if we do get some spinoffs here and there, great. But it doesn't need anything. It's perfect the way it is. Although I didn't give it a 10, but that's okay.
Well, I mean, I will admit that the last season is not the best. I still think season 5 really is. And my biggest criticism of the last season is I don't think you needed 15 episodes. I think 12 should have probably been sufficient. There's a lot.
I agree. I think season 6 part 3 is a 10. I think season 6 parts 1 and 2 are probably a 7 and an 8.
Yeah, I mean, you get a lot of backstory. You get, you're dealing with grief. You're Daniel finding out more about Mr. Miyagi and then all that. But there's a lot of stuff that like you could have cut down.
Yeah.
To make 12 episodes, whereas every other season, it kind of fits perfectly into 10, 30 to 40 minute episodes to where you feel like you're watching a 3 or 4 hour movie.
Yeah.
And season 5 was so fucking intense. Like, it's like, we're going to bring back everybody, every fucking bad guy, the final battle, It's like, Jesus Christ. Is anybody actually going to die in this show? I mean, they almost do.
One guy does.
Yeah, I didn't expect Mike Barnes to come back, and that was funny, and he's another one that has a great redemption story. I don't know. I don't want to say that it's like a Hallmark movie where you have like the perfect ending that's unrealistic. I think it ends how it should for the characters by them coming to acceptance for their past and understanding about who they are now. Okay. Johnny is still going to be the total 80s trying to make everybody into a badass. And God love him. We need that. And Daniel is going to be the Felix Odd Couple character that, is anal about everything and just you almost want to slap at times. But again, they need each other and realize, and that's a great gesture by Daniel at the end of the series where he helps him open up Cobra Kai and realize that we need both of these and the students can train in both. Okay. And Johnny can have his moment and find what's going to make him happy at the end of the day. And they do kind of become this one big, happy family, so to speak. The
kind of reminds me of the ending of Lethal Weapon 4.
Yeah.
With the giant family photo picture.
Oh my God. That's a callback.
Yeah. But let me ask this. I think it's a very important question. How the hell is Cole going to beat Shao Kahn if he can't even beat Johnny Lawrence?
Very true. So again, like I said, my favorite redemption story was always Chosen, more than anything else. I love how he kind of came back in the middle of season 3 and having that very nerd moment at the end of season 4, where they're both bowing to Mr. Miyagi's grave. You're like, yes. And you just know that season 5 is going to be great. There's going to be a lot of fun-filled action and stuff. But again, Terry Silver is the ultimate villain, and still you kind of feel sorry for him in the end, but you're also like, yeah, but you should die because you're just a rich asshole.
You're a dick.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking to your points and Brendan's, I am actually looking forward to whatever these writers do in the future, because the follow through that they developed and they actually stuck with, I don't think it would have been nearly as good. I mean, how many shows have we watched where they bring up so many different points and then never give us the payoff? I mean, that happens all the time. And I was halfway expecting it, like, just for characters to just peter out and us never hear from them again. But it didn't.
Get payoff without setup, or you get setup and then no payoff because they just forgot about it, or because there's so many different writers working on it that they forgot they had to tie up that loose end.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what killed oh man, I always forget the name of that series. I don't know why. The House of Dragons first series, the
Game of Thrones.
The words disappear from my brain. I don't even know why, but I feel like that's what happened with Game of Thrones so many times, is that exact sin of
we
what
all
you're
this
talking
great
about.
build up, but we got to figure out a way to tie it all together and make up our own ending because the writer is too, fat and lazy to finish his books. Yeah.
Don't tell me to put on a condom if we're not going to screw, basically.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, that's my favorite redemption story. Jimmy, what is yours?
No, I mean, I still look. I love them all. I mean, Johnny's going to be probably my favorite character, but as far as redemption story, I know it doesn't technically, like I said, it's not technically a redemption story. I still like Kreese's, he's the most complex character that they didn't feel the need to totally redeem, and I enjoy that.
Redeems himself. He takes.
Well, I mean, yes, but I mean, not 100%. He still remains really complex. Like, you don't have to be like, he became a really good person in the end,
right.
And with, you don't have to do that.
Yeah, because he's not. I don't think he's still a really good person. think he's still a bad guy. He just like I still think he would, if somebody looks at him wrong, he'd smack him upside the head. But he realized that he loved Johnny and he did Johnny wrong and he was sorry for that.
Right.
Like, I'd almost kind of, there's a lot of parallels from that level between him and Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin.
Yeah.
Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin is a villain, but he cares about the people he cares about. He will do anything for the people he cares about. But anybody else, you better not step in his way because you're going to end up as a dead bug.
Right.
And I think Kreese is a similar character. And so I think, yes, there is a bit of redemption for him. I think he's too far down the road that he had traveled to fully redeem himself. And that's why he goes out the way he does.
Well, if you also notice too, you can say that he is Anakin Skywalker / Darth Vader. He finds that last moment of redemption and he takes down the ultimate villain to save everybody in the end.
Fair comparison. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Hey, and Darth Vader's is not my favorite. Han Solo was always my favorite character, but as far as like anyone using the Force, he was always my favorite Force user in all the series.
So Brendan, is that your favorite redemption story or redemption-ish?
Man, I don't know. They're all, just to be different, I'll say Johnny. Because you picked Chosen, and I love Chosen's story, and I love the actor. He plays the character with such joy. And I love Kreese. And Kreese's character is definitely the most complex out of any of them. But you know what? Johnny's just dealing with some real world shit, man. He's dealing with the trauma of not knowing his real father, the trauma of losing his mother young, the trauma of his father figure absolutely betraying him and just, as he put it, creating the worst moment of his life.
Okay. I agree. Again, what you're saying about Kreese. I mean, he is always going to be morally bankrupt, but he does, that one final act and stuff like that. And I think that's what, makes him. That's why I make the comparison to Darth Vader. Maybe it's about what you do in the end and how you go out. So you can definitely consider that a redemption story. All right. We're going to move on to something, but Chad, I do want to ask you real quick. You didn't get a chance to answer. What is your favorite redemption story?
Well, I know Johnny is usually the obvious answer, but I think we kind of knew that from the beginning that it was going to be a redemption story about Johnny. I think it was kind of marketed that way. It was too obvious, but I'm with you, Marcus. It's like I never expected Chosen to even be a part of the show, much less be that much of a part of the show and to be that enjoyable to watch, considering what a complete prick he was in Karate Kid 2 and how he became basically, like you said, his, which one of y'all said it, his ride or die buddy within 30 seconds of showing up. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm totally on board with this. Loved him. He was he had his breakdown moments, he had his regrets and this, that, and the other. And then it just got better and better and better as time went on.
But I also think that, even within that culture and, that you can find forgiveness, and that's what he did. he was a bully and he got over that. And I loved him like in season 5 when he trains everybody, to guard the one guy or whatever. And then you see that, it gets foreshadowed. Like him training everybody, just that scene of him popping out of the pond like he's in the jungle. He has so much fun with it. And yeah, there's some, kind of kooky, ridiculous moments. I mean, like the wine tasting scene or whatever. It was funny and all that, but him yelling about storage wars and stuff. Yeah, you kind of root for him to, with Kumiko. But I also think that here, you get an unconventional love story. And even the girl, and I'm forgetting the character's name. She's another example of it is not about your style. It's you're being trained by a sociopath. Okay. And how do you change that? And how do you mold this style that is still a good style of martial arts? But now you're going to kind of blend it together with these two characters who find their, kind of fun love story. So, at the end of the day, Cobra Kai, I think, has always been about how you stand up to bullies. How do you stand up to the people that teach martial arts wrong? Okay. While there are different styles, I made a reference in the article to Bruce Lee, who blended a lot of different styles into his own Jeet Kune Do and said, you can borrow the best, but it should flow. And that's kind of what Cobra Kai versus
yeah,
and Miyagi-Do really is. So,
well, to your point though, I mean, like that is like the point of the original movie too, and even the second movie and even the third movie. It's always been about like standing up for what's right, standing up against bullies, and like being your own person and standing up for yourself. That's always been like the main. I would have been disappointed if they hadn't done that a lot in the series.
Yeah, I will say, to me, the second best redemption story is Miguel and Robbie, who literally are becoming brothers.
Yeah.
And Johnny was right. You got to let them fight it out. It's like two kids, like just fight it out, get it out in the open, and then you start to realize, why are we fighting? Why are we rivals? And they both find out we're about to be big brothers. So you kind of, again, you get this big happy family and anything else. All right, before we get to talking about the end, and our final question, Easter eggs. There's so many little Easter eggs throughout the 6 seasons, things that, tie-ins and callbacks. I want to know from everybody, what was your favorite? Here is my 2, something I mentioned in the article. The fact that they recreated the dates at Golf and Stuff, not just once, but twice. Using the original music from the first movie. I love the fact that Miguel and Sam go and do that in the first season, and then Allie and Johnny go and do it. And you kind of flip the music a little bit, Young Hearts and Feel the Night from the original movie soundtrack. But that sense of nostalgia, and of course, Johnny, I'm going to tell you where to take. It's a place I used to take all my babes back in the day. Which made me really just kind of love his character even more. But again, recreating the date scene once is kind of cool, but being able to do it twice, that cracked me up. That was my favorite little Easter egg. All right. Chad, how about you?
Well, I like the one they did in this past season where Robbie jumps up and says, don't shoot, don't shoot. And that's exactly what Daniel did to Allie in Karate 1. I was like, well played, well played. One thing I think might have gotten by a lot of people, the final episode, the 2 guys sitting at the bar having that Back to the Future discussion. You know who that was, right?
Well, it's the creators.
It's the creator of the show. Yeah. And I'm like, did they just maybe tantalize us and tease us with what their next dream project is?
I know. And you're like, wait a minute. And you're kind of like, because he gets you thinking, like, maybe this could work.
Maybe that could be it. Yeah, this could be a thing.
Elizabeth Shue comes back again and reprises another character.
Exactly. That's all I can think of. I'm like, well done.
And she's still chosen as the greatest redemption story, but she's still my favorite cameo. how they got her for those 2 episodes. I know it.
I mean, Chosen's not really a cameo at this point. He becomes a series regular. So
Right. But she has talked about over the last couple of years about how it ended up working out, and she never thought she had returned, when they basically, ceremoniously dismissed her character at, Karate Kid Part 2. And just, again, how all that worked out. And she kind of sets both of them on the right path. That's going to end up, until the end of the series, which I thought was great. Like I said, that's my favorite game. But anyway, Jimmy, your favorite Easter egg?
Too
many of them to choose.
There's a lot of them. I will say, like, going way back. See, like, if I wanted to like go all the way back to like the season 1, I can't remember which episode it was. It may have even been the first episode. Like, you're getting introduced to everybody, but you basically get a rehash of one of the iconic scenes of Daniel, getting the crap beat out of him on the beach, but it's happening at like the little mini mart, and who comes to save him? And it's Johnny, and they set up a lot of that sort of thing throughout the whole series. And every time it's just like one of these little wink and nods. And if you hadn't seen the movies, you would not have gotten it. And for me, I mean, that made the series. It's just it's hard for me to pick one. But it's those moments that really make it very personal for me. It makes me really love it.
Yeah. Brendan?
So I'll take one of the more recent ones just because it made me laugh stupidly hard, probably more than it should have. But it was in one of the last episodes, and that's when Johnny is preparing to propose, and the violin players are playing "Take My Breath Away" from Top Gun. And I'm like, because I did a double take, because I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm like watching it while doing other things and watching it while eating dinner, and I went,
Yeah.
Is he going to propose to "Take My Breath Away" on violin on a string quartet?
I mean, it's probably the most Johnny 80s thing you could do.
But it's like the classiest version of the most Johnny 80s things you can do, because he gets it on a string quartet.
It was in season 3 when they end up at the Mexican restaurant together and they kind of get drunk, and Amanda and Carmen, that's what the character name,
Carmen, yes,
are hanging out and stuff and getting to know it. That was another really fun thing where it's building to this thing where they don't hate each other. They have more in common. But I'll even go back to the first season when he has to give Johnny the car, and they're riding in the car and they're listening to Speedwagon. They duke it out. They go for drinks. They go by, Johnny's or Daniel's old apartment complex. And they start to realize that they have a lot more in common. But again, Johnny is the ultimate 80s guy. Like, I love the movies that he watches. When they are preparing to audition for the Seikatai tournament, and he brings up Rocky IV references, and a guy, the host, absolutely loves it.
Yeah.
This is why we need. Well, I was saying, this is why we need Johnny Lawrence. He has those great callbacks to an awesome time.
What he brought to the slumber party. Yeah, I brought cookies and tampons.
We'll call it Cobra Kai After Dark. No.
I think my
he
favorite
was killing
scene,
me. That scene, man, he was killing me.
I think my favorite scene of the whole show, though, was the second, or maybe the last or second to last episode, where Daniel and Johnny are cruising in the convertible that Mr. Miyagi gave Daniel.
Yeah.
I just thought that was cool that they were together in that car
with him and his friend playing in the background and shit. And
and then
Johnny
him taking him back to the original, his original dojo.
Yeah.
Just once again bringing everything full circle and together. Yeah, it's just well done. It's well written.
I'll give you one more Easter egg. This was my favorite episode of season 2, the Cobra Kai reunion, where he goes out with all the guys and they kick butt.
Yeah.
Into a rumble. And it was right before one of the actors, he had cancer at the time, would pass away.
By the time the show aired, he had passed away.
It was
Yeah.
Wasn't it Steve McQueen's kid?
No, that was
no. Well, I mean, he had cancer too.
the guy that played Dutch.
Oh yeah. It was the guy.
Well, they even dedicated an episode to him.
Yeah,
I believe.
they dedicated that episode to him because by the time he got it together, he had already passed away. Yeah, like he was sick when he was.
Dutch was Chad McQueen.
Oh, okay.
Well, Dutch is, but no, I got to look at IMDb on this one because it's hard to remember like all the actors' names. I did like how the fact that they bought Randy Heller, like the actress back to play Daniel's mom.
It was Tommy Rob Garrison.
Yeah, there you go.
I thought so because the McQueen one, the Dutch episode, or the episode that was dedicated to him, I think wasn't that in season 6?
Yeah, it was this season.
5 or 6.
Yeah, because he just passed away last year, and I think they had talked about that. The Dutch character was actually like in prison. That's how they kind of wrote him. But another one too, Bobby Brown, or I'm sorry, Ron Thomas, who played Bobby Brown, keeps popping up, and he's like a minister. Yeah, like I love how he was the one that officiated the wedding. So you get another scene of these guys were not bad. They were young, they were stupid. Yes, they gave into it, but they also realized years later that Kreese was kind of a psychopath. And I think they helped ground Johnny too. And like, you can do better with Cobra Kai, type of thing. So it was always nice to kind of have them back. Yeah, no, but I do agree. There's so many little callbacks, like Miguel finding the drum in the dojo, and then how she's showing him how to use the drum technique, and
even Chosen has a callback when he basically demystifies the heat massage. Yeah, it's like it's not magic.
No. that was really funny too. So the final question I asked in the article was, did the show end right? Because there's so many season finales that are controversial that we complain about. Game of Thrones, The Sopranos. But for Cobra Kai, do you feel like that this ended exactly the way it should? I do. That's my personal opinion. Like, I couldn't have asked for a better ending. Jimmy?
I have no complaints. Absolutely none. The fact is, like, look, if you take the series as a whole, all 6 seasons, like, I feel like it started really strong and it ended really strong. It was a little messy and noisy in the middle, but I think they did it right. I mean, the book ended it really well, and it's a really well-rounded series. I can't say that about a ton of series either. Like most series just kind of peter out, in my opinion.
Yeah, most series do not finish strong.
Yeah. Brendan, your opinion?
So, I think I agree with you. I want to say that. I think there's an argument to be made where you could have Johnny lose by a point because the other guy is just so much bigger, and then there's a lesson taught there too. Johnny learns that it's okay to lose. I don't think that ending would have been as satisfying. I think it would have been fine, but I don't think it would have been as satisfying. I think Johnny has to complete his redemption arc. He has to have that one last moment, and then he gets to just be a sensei because he's vanquished that last ghost,
Yeah.
and he gets to go out on top, and he gets to be not just go out on top for himself, but he gets to be a hero to all his students.
Right.
He gets to be the hero to his students that Kreese wasn't to him, even
Right.
more importantly. And
Well-
so, yeah, I think you could have ended it differently, and it still would have been a good show. it just wouldn't have been as satisfying. So yes, I think they did it right.
Well, to the point when you say that, to me, the greatest reference in the final episode is the Rocky reference. It's the fact that Daniel points out that Rocky 1 and 2 are the best, but Johnny is more Rocky 3 and 4.
Mhm.
So if that's true, yes, he has to be the underdog. He has to be Rocky versus Ivan Drago, and that's what that fight is. And he has to win in the end. The other one is good, and you learn and blah, blah, blah. But it's also kind of coming full circle with buying your first house, having a child, blended families, and being on the cover of Sports Illustrated. You know, Daniel is not the one who really needs all that at the end of the day.
Which, by the way, we all know Johnny's going to be living off that cover of Sports Illustrated for the next 20 years.
Free drinks all around. But I think for Johnny, that is the high point of coming full circle. So to me, it does. But anyway, Chad, your opinion?
Man, I got to tell you, I had almost like, you know, a Braveheart goosebump moment with, you know, they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom. When he got in Johnny's face and says, "Does fear exist in your dojo? Does pain exist in your?" Like,
No, he says,
yeah,
"I'm damn sure no pain doesn't exist in your dojo." Yeah.
it's like, yes, Daniel, that's how you turn his ass around.
Now go kick his ass and let's go home.
Just go kick the shit out of this ass. I'm like, oh, thank God. The only thing that I felt like it was a loose end that was kind of left dangling is you never got to see them react to the news of what had happened to Kreese and Silver.
Yeah.
You never find out. Did they ever get? You know, of course they found out, but we didn't see them be informed about.
Well, here's a fun.
It was weird too when they were like, "Where is Silver?" And I'm like, "Okay, that was a really big explosion. The Coast Guard would have noticed."
Exactly. That's it would
Well,
make
here
freaking news, you know.
Here's a fun fact that just came out this past week. They shot an alternate ending where Kreese survived, and the deleted scene was going to be. I know. The deleted scene is when they fade back at the newsstand of the Sports Illustrated cover. It was going to be Kreese picking it up with kind of like a semi-burned hand or whatever. And I'm like,
yeah, I'm glad they didn't do that.
No, I do. I think it's like great. You know, I mean, again, you kind of root for Kreese, but I think that's also the way that he deserves to go out. You know, that's his going out on a high note and taking down the villain.
Even if it, I mean, you know, and I'd have been happy if it had been like a Michael Corleone at the end of Godfather 3 moment where he sees the article and then he slumps over. You know,
whatever. You know, I would have been okay with that too.
He smiles, nods his head, and then he's gone. You know,
yeah,
something like that would have been. I'd been okay with it, but don't show him like walking, limping away, dragging a friggin', you know, burnt.
Yeah, it's not Shane. Okay, I don't want the ambiguity. I want to know he's dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I always hate that convention.
There's a callback for you.
If you didn't see a dead body, on screen, then they're not dead. You know, like,
and sometimes even when you
like the Fed, you know.
You can have ambiguous, you know, endings with a lot of ambiguity and all that. I personally don't hate the ending of Sopranos. I don't jump into the controversy, but I'm not a huge fan of the show like everybody else. I get it.
I never thought it was controversial. I always thought it was very clear, the ending. Like, it made sense to me. A lot of people hated it. It never bothered me.
Breaking Bad's another one that I'm like, I thought that kind of ended perfectly for that character, and I'm glad they did the prologue for Jesse with the movie. You know,
but let's face it, not every show can end like Newhart. You know,
no.
Most perfect show.
But I also like if you want to take a like like what the fuck type of moment where Saint Elsewhere is just all in the kid's mind. It's like what? But I will say this from a nerd standpoint, I think this ends a lot better than one of my favorite shows, The X-Files, with its multiple endings. You know, because you think Scully and Mulder are going to ride off and they make sense of things at the end of season 9, and the smoking man is really dead, but now he's not, and then they bring it back, and Monica is working with the smoking man, and then they finally have another ending where Scully is pregnant, nearing 60, and they're really gonna fight. It's just like, Jesus fucking Christ, can we come up with some kind of ending that literally makes sense?
Top return of the kinging this damn thing.
See, I thought the ending of season 8 in the X-Files literally would have been perfect. Like that would have been a great story arc for everybody. But no, we have to keep going. We have to do whatever. So again, this ends exactly in my mind what needs to happen. And it obviously sets up what you're going to do with this Karate Kid Legends movie, which is, by the way, set 3 years after this series. So, and there's definitely room for spinoffs, characters coming back. And I don't know if the spinoffs would really work as much, but I like where all these characters have kind of, ended up. I think the most important thing is you have to have a really good villain. If you don't have that, then it really doesn't work. And that's the great thing about Terry Silver is he was the ultimate villain. That's my biggest complaint about Karate Kid Part 4 is the villain is not good. There's no reason to really care or hate him. And I love Michael Ironside, but Michael Ironside to me is not really a great villain. I still see Jester from Top Gun. So anyway, all right.
Or Rychek from Starship Troopers.
Yeah, exactly. All right, final thoughts. So we'll start with this. We've talked about season 6 maybe being a little too long. How overall the entire season, what is your final grade? I gave the final season an 8. It was good, but not as good as it could have been because it was too long. Chad, how about you?
I'm right there with you. There was, I don't know what I was again. It was that kind of encapsulates the whole thing. It's like I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't expecting it to be this good. It was a satisfying ending, but it did have some stumbles and hiccups along the way. Like I said, the first third of it, I'm like, I was concerned. I was deeply concerned. I'm like, have we peaked already? Because it was a really slow, sloggy start at the beginning of season 6. I'm like,
I mean, it obviously picked up with the second part when they're actually in the tournament, but so
yeah, I'm right there with you. I'll give it an 8 myself.
Yeah, Brendan, how about you?
So I'm gonna give, like I said earlier, I think like the first 2 parts of it were an 8 each, and then the last part was a 10. But overall, I'm gonna agree with both you guys and say an 8. I will say just because of the body of work for the whole season, for the whole series, I'm gonna go ahead and do something I've never done. Partially nostalgia. I'm gonna give the whole series a 10.
Okay, well, that was my next question, but we'll jump a little early there.
Yeah.
Jimmy, just the last season.
Okay, just the last season. I'm gonna do what I always do. I'm gonna be a little bit more generous. I'm gonna give it a 9 because I felt like it was a great capper.
Okay, all right.
I'm always a little nicer than you guys, dicks.
Am I not the nicest guy or the guy that rates too high on things anymore? Wow. Okay. No, I mean the nostalgia is definitely there, but as a series itself. So Brendan already started. You gave it a perfect 10. I don't give the series a perfect 10. There are some lulls in there that I have a problem with. I do criticize some of the more high schoolish moments. I get you are dealing with high school kids. It's almost there. It's like a 9.5, but I kind of give it more of a 9 itself. Okay. Season 2 was okay. I love season 1 setting up everything. Season 3 was amazing. Season 4 was kind of like but season 5 was really amazing. And then they kind of did. So I can't quite give it a perfect 10. And I'm not going to totally give into my nostalgia, but it's right up there and has been one of my all-time favorite series. So that's me.
I think there's just been I've been disappointed by so many things lately But the fact that this didn't, I'm just like, I'm pulling out the Oprah. You get a 10. So,
Because you're not anything else that's been disappointing. Okay, I gotcha.
well, and it was good in its own right. And I think the overall, yes, there were some points here and there where, yeah, all right, there's some lulls. I'm not gonna argue that. You're absolutely right. There were. I just think the overall body of it, the enjoyment I got out of it, it earned it.
Well, I mean, like Chad said, the nostalgia was done right, and and we got a good payoff. So that that's why I think it should be rated high, because if you watch it as a whole, even with some of those moments, lulls or whatever, um, overall, it's just a fantastic show. So anyway, Chad, with that said, how do you rate the entire series?
The same. I give it an 8 overall. I mean, it's just there were some inconsistencies. There were some real you're stretching it a little bit. There are some there's some flawed logic involved, and some things just don't quite line up. Uh, you know that and we could go into specifics, but I don't want to beat a dead horse. But I was extremely satisfied. This is not something that I expected to not only like as much as I did, but pretty much love the damn thing. It was like, come here, you little bastard show. You really do like it. It's a show you want to hang out with.
Also made the movies a lot more fun to go back and watch.
Yeah.
So Jimmy, what about you? Overall, did everything fit? Was it perfect for you?
Sorry, I had to unmute. Okay, so season 1, awesome. Season 6, awesome. Season 5 was really good. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of noise in the middle, and it is to your point. The high school drama, every other minute there seems to be someone just bickering and bitching, but overall, I mean, that kind of gives it the charm. I have to give it an 8 as well. I mean, it's still enjoyable.
Also, that
It's
was high
still
school.
yeah. I mean, if you have too much high school trauma, I think you'll probably not enjoy it as much, maybe.
Like the high school fight at the end of season 2. I mean, the all-out brawl. It was kind of stupid, but also a lot of fun too. Because it's like, how would it ever get to this point?
It would have been so cathartic for me if it happened in real life.
Yeah.
I was bullied in high school, and if there was an all-out brawl and I could have just started swinging at people and mostly gotten away with it because what are they going to do? Charge everybody with assault? I would have gotten out a lot of frustrations that day.
Yeah.
I mean, and that does happen throughout the series. People get away with almost everything throughout the whole series.
Yeah.
I mean,
and how are some of these kids not locked up? I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I'm sorry, as much as karate is about self-discipline, they do let their emotions.
Well, it is about self-discipline.
Teenagers.
But yeah, I was going to say teenagers, your frontal lobe doesn't fully develop till like 21, 25, depending on if you're a woman or a guy. So,
So one final thing that I will say, I talked about how it made, the movies better, it made the whole universe better. There was one moment that really cemented and redeemed Karate Kid Part 3 for me. It wasn't necessarily Mike Barnes coming back, although I'm glad they brought it. And I like how they have like an all-out brawl and go after Terry Silver at the end of season 5. It's the fact that they brought Robin Lively back. Okay, and she turns out to be Amanda's cousin, and she's the one that introduces Daniel and Amanda. Her trying to explain to Amanda how serious this is with Terry Silver. It's like, and Amanda's like, oh my God, why is karate going to save everything? And she's like, no, you don't get it. Let me explain it. And then they go off and kick some bitch's ass in the bar. I'm like, that's a great cameo, because she is the one that puts it into perspective. Like, no, you don't get it. Okay. This is serious, and you need to get on board. You need to stand by your man here. Terry Silver is bad.
Yeah, I was cheering for her in that episode because I was like, I've never seen an ex-girlfriend become your best wingman. That's phenomenal.
I know, right? I know, absolutely. And I went back and I watched Karate Kid Part 3. And it's like, again, it's not a great movie, but it puts it into perspective about Daniel dealing with everything and stuff. The only thing about Karate Kid Part 3, though, is that whole thing was stupid. Like, well, if you're the champion, you only have to do one fight now. Like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah,
But it is what it is. I think at the end of the day, for future TV writers, producers out there, if you are looking for a roadmap of bringing back a something that you loved as a kid and how you can do this right,
This is
and
your blueprint.
this is your roadmap. So for all the rumors that we have heard for 30 some odd years that there's going to be a sequel to the Goonies, I'm like, I don't know if that should really happen.
Please help us.
I know. But if you're going to do it, here is a roadmap.
Can you
Okay.
imagine if these guys had been paid by Lucasfilm to do the sequel trilogy?
Oh my God. I know, right?
We would have got the big three back together. The big three would have taught the new generation. The new generation would have taken the torch. The new generation all would have had special, unique things to do, and it would have made. Oh, and by the way, the villains would have been better.
Yeah.
They would have given Avon Driver and Brendan Gleeson so much better material to work with. It would have been fantastic.
Luke would
a
have
shame.
gone off on a really great adventure, even if he sacrificed himself instead of force projection. I mean,
Yeah.
It's just like,
I have no problem with. Yeah, let's not get into this again. I'm sorry.
no. I'm just saying that you've done one thing. If the story teaches you anything, it's the old generation and what they pass on to the newer generation that makes all these characters come full circle to the perfect end. If you don't do that, it's a simple roadmap in storytelling. Okay. So that's why you can bring old characters back. Here's another thing. That's what's made the Expendables movies fun. I'm not saying they're great movies, but you're talking about old action stars who kind of give way to a new generation of like special ops.
Chuck Norris tells his own Chuck Norris joke. I mean, the Expendables were worth it just for that. I was bitten by a snake once.
When
After
the
6
first
days of
Expendables-
excruciating pain, the snake died.
When the first Expendables movies came out, I saw Dolph Lundgren and all these other characters. I literally like almost jumped out of my seat with joy, and it was so over the top. It was so good. I mean, I completely agree with you guys. But I will say this: with all these movies coming out, they're really capitalizing on nostalgia. They're capitalizing on us.
Yeah.
I did read an article the other day that said, like the youngs are not watching movies as much and just don't enjoy them nearly at all. So if you're going to make money, you really do have to aim at my age and older. Otherwise, you're probably not going to get the audience, which may be one of the reasons why
kids ain't
Disney
buying
isn't.
toys either.
Yeah.
You want
right.
action figures and stuff like this guy right here to sell.
Yeah.
Okay, and I have like 30 of these sitting just above my computer here. You want those to sell? You want lightsabers to sell? You want all that stuff to sell? You want people to drink beer and buy popcorn while they're at the movie theater? You better market to 40 and 50-year-olds.
No, I teach a
All right.
sports and entertainment marketing class.
I got to cut you off right there because we are literally running out of time. I know. But one final thought on Cobra Kai. You didn't make 20 some odd episodes that were an hour long. You had the right amount of time to tell this story, even if the last season might have been a little too long. That's also what made it work, because you could binge watch a season in an afternoon. So, all right. If you have not watched Cobra Kai, it is all on Netflix right now. It's a good time to start the show, and it's a good time to go back and binge watch it from the beginning. That's what I started doing, and has made it even better. Plus, the Karate Kid movies are on there. Even that fourth one that you may not necessarily want to watch, but you should still watch anyway, just for nostalgia. So, all right, everybody. We'll be back in the next few weeks and stuff. And if you are in the Dallas area in the middle of March, come to AllCon, where we will be doing a Star Trek panel, and my gaming company will be running the gaming room. So, with that said, we are getting out of here for the week. It is time to say goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Take care, guys.